everyone. It's a great pleasure to run this session. There has been a lot of interest in the community and a lot of people actually asked to have a session like this. So it is with great pleasure that I pass my speaking mic to Nic, who is the YunoJuno member, but also the owner of Garfield Accountants, and she's going to tell you everything about managing your finances as a freelancer. Over to you, Nic.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. I'm going to start off with a couple of caveats. I've never done this before, so it's my first, if you want, public speaking event. So cut me some slack. And secondly, I have a dog who is currently in here with me, but at times may come up to me and ask to be put on their blanket. So if I turn away very temporarily, apologies, but he's really demanding. If we jump in, so like Eva said, this topic has been coming up on the YunoJuno Slack for a long time, and I try to jump in and help where I can. So I think this is a really important topic and not discussed enough, in my opinion. If we go into the agenda, I've kind of tried to structure this in a bit of a logical way to break this out into kind of a more understandable approach. So I've sectioned it with the various things to keep in mind, and then a few tips at the end. We'll start off with who am I? So I'm not just a random person who's deciding to talk about freelancing and contracting and budgets or whatever. I am an ex-freelancer, so contractor actually. I've used YunoJuno. I know the world all too well, and I started Garfield Accountants a few years ago because I saw kind of a gap in the market where I saw that my partner herself, who is not accountant, God demand of an accountant like I do, I studied this, so I know it all too well, had an accountant who was explaining the accounts to her, but she never understood what they were saying, and she couldn't really grasp her accounts. And I basically saw the gap in the industry, and I just created Garfield Accountants to make a service that is easier for everyone to understand, and to give the power back to the business owners or the sole traders to understand what is going on in their accounts. Because for me, that is the most important thing, is that you as the owners and the people who are ultimately responsible are understanding what is going on and why decisions are being made on your behalf, and as well the decisions that you are making. Moving on to the next slide is a bit of another caveat here. The contents are highly generic. It doesn't necessarily fully apply to your situation. So if you have any questions and want to discuss what I'm saying, relating directly to what your situation is, you can book some time in my calendar. I was going to share that across after the meeting. It's free. I'm not asking for any money, but always take what I'm saying with a pinch of salt, because your situation might be slightly different. All right, so let's get into the meat and the reason you're all here. So the first step is setting up your business, right? You've decided maybe you stopped working as an employee, and you've decided to go off on your own. So you're ultimately faced with two decisions, realistically. Those are that you can either be a sole trader or a limited company. And I'm going to go into what those are, because not everyone really knows. So essentially, a sole trader is no different from, it's just you acting as a business. So the business and you are the same person. But from a legal perspective, it's super easy to get started. You can just kind of make the decision on a whim and do it. The only real thing you need to do is register that you're a sole trader with HMRC, which is just letting them know you're going to start filling out a self-assessment. And there's several benefits to doing that. There are some disadvantages too. But I've kind of covered the high level of them here, so it's easy to get started. A big one is the profits after tax of the business are yours, and that's different to a limited company, which we will cover in a minute. It's low cost, so the accounts, from an accounting perspective particularly, the costs are lower for being a sole trader. And your sole trader accounts and all your information is private. There's no obligation to make any of that information public by anyone. Again, different to limited company, which we'll cover in a second. A couple of the key disadvantages of being a sole trader are that, like I said, you and the business are one and the same. So ultimately, if, you know, hopefully this never happens, but if something were to happen and the business didn't do well and you had debts to pay, the people that you owe money to could come after your personal assets to settle their debts. So they could come after your car, your house, whatever. And equally, similarly, another disadvantage is tax planning is very limited. You cannot control or minimize. You just cannot control the tax that is paid when you're working as a sole trader. And I do not mean control in the sense of dodge. I mean just try to be strategic and plan. There's just no avenue for it. Once the money has hit your bank account, you're immediately taxed on it. You cannot stop that. And I will explain why I particularly raised that in the next slide. So the next option is to act as a limited company. Now, the costs for this are slightly higher because you have more responsibilities. So you have more complicated accounts to generate, and you have more obligations because now there's more that is expected of you as a business. In this setup, you and the business are two completely different entities. So legally speaking, there's no, other than the fact that you're a shareholder of that business, you're separate from the business. And the benefit from this is where we said that a sole trader someone who you owe money to can come after your personal assets. In the case of a sole trader, with a limited company, there's limited liability. So the buck stops with the limited company. If the company cannot cover the debt it owes, unless in extreme circumstances where you've really, really messed up, they just can't come to your personal assets. The good thing about being a limited company is you're able to plan how much the tax impact. So by plan, I mean the profit in the business after taxes are paid is the property of the business. Now, when you personally, as the shareholder, draw that profit, be that as a salary or a dividend, you are taxed on it. So you can plan how much tax it needs to be paid by the amount that you draw. So if you don't need all that money, you can choose to only draw part of that money, and so lower the amount of tax that you pay. You could make pension contributions. Again, we'll cover all of these things in following slides, but there are things that can be done with the help of a professional or a lot of research that can help you to plan your tax implication with a limited company. So another advantage of being a limited company is greater credibility. So in a lot of industries, businesses will not deal with sole traders. I don't think it's as impactful in the freelancer market, but it does happen sometimes. I do have some clients who've told me that they just cannot work as a sole trader because their clients will not work with the structure. Then, if we look at the disadvantages, you need to register your company with Companies House. So you can, it's very quick, just kind of decide on a whim to start a limited company, but there's a registration process that it generally takes about 48 hours at worst. It has taken up to like 2 hours when I've done it before for my clients, but it could take up to 2 days depending on the backlog at Companies House. Limited companies need to file annual accounts and corporation tax returns. So those are generally better off with an accountant. There is software that can be used to help you do this, but that obviously comes at a cost, either the software or the accountant, obviously. And a key thing is company information is made public. So both the address of the business, a lot of freelancers and contractors end up using their home address, so that becomes publicly available on the register, and anyone can search for that, as well as the address of directors and shareholders, which oftentimes you are both, as the freelancer working through a company, will also be made public. Now, there's obviously virtual addresses, which I've seen discussed on the Slack channel. So a lot of people are aware of this, that you can, which is a way to kind of get around that information being made public, but it's just kind of something to be aware of. So then it kind of begs the question, which one should I choose? And that really depends on a lot of factors. And this is where I say, you know, your situation may differ to other people on the call, but it's trying to factor in, do you have any other sources of income? So as an example, if you were working part-time and doing freelancing as a separate thing, then I might say, you know what, it probably makes sense to freelance through a limited company, again, from that tax planning perspective. But again, it needs a discussion. What are your plans for the business? Do you plan to grow? Do you plan to seek funding? Because, for example, a sole trader is unlikely to seek funding, but if you do plan to seek funding, maybe it makes sense to go down the limited company route straight away. Another factor is the profit you anticipate making. If you're going into six-figure, I think it's a bit of a no-brainer, both from a protection perspective, but also a tax planning perspective, to go down the limited company route. But if you think that the profits are going to be around the 50K, 30K bracket, it starts to become like you really want to explore the two options very closely and very well to find out actually what makes the most sense for you, because it kind of scales very balanced at those lower numbers. Just trying to think if there's anything else to cover. I think that kind of is it for this setting up your business section. Because there's a lot of information being presented, I'm going to ask if there's any questions more often than just at the end. So I'll open up the floor here. Do you have any questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat, and I think Eva's going to mediate for us. Any questions, or if not, we'll jump on to the next bit.
Also, feel free to raise your hand and hang out if you prefer to ask your question rather than type. Although we do have a question from Faye. Faye, if you can unmute yourself, it would be great if you could ask it.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I was wondering, if you are just a sole trader and you're offered a job before you've been set up or registered with HMRC, is it possible to kind of crack on and start work and register after you've already invoiced for that work, or would you have to be set up beforehand?
No, you can do that after you've invoiced. There's also a little allowance in that. Technically speaking, if you haven't, you only have to register as a sole trader after you've made £1,000 within a tax year. So if you're still below that bracket, you don't really need to register at all.
Okay, thank you.
And also registering is super easy, so it shouldn't take you very long. I think it's just filling out a form on the website.
And we have another question from Grace. Grace, can you unmute yourself and ask?
Hello, yeah, sure, thank you. Hi guys. I just had a quick question around sort of my fluctuating circumstances. So sorry if this is a little specific, but because my contracts have sort of fallen through the floor recently for economic reasons, I assume, and IR35 and such, I have just accepted a PAYE role for a fixed term contract, and I just wondered whether it would make sense to close my limited company that I currently have, or kind of put it dormant, or what. I'm at a loss at the moment, and Google isn't really helping, so I'm not really sure.
The answer depends a little bit. So it depends. Firstly, are there any funds in the business? What are your plans for the future? So if you're thinking that you might start contracting again or freelancing, it makes sense to just leave it open. You could, if there are funds in the business and you didn't have any plans of contracting down the line, you could close it. There is the entrepreneur's relief, which allows you to draw out all the funds in the business and that pay 10% tax on that, which is obviously less than you would normally pay. However, that comes with a massive caveat that you are then not allowed to open up or be the director of another business for, officially speaking, it's 2 years, but I've heard rumblings and it does actually take longer. So it depends. There is no harm in leaving the business open at all, other than the fact that you will need to file accounts. But you could either, if you understand enough, you could do it yourself, or an accountant shouldn't charge you too much to file dormant accounts. No problem. All right, any other questions? Or if not, I will move on to the next section. All right. Well, if anyone thinks of anything, there's going to be another kind of more open-ended question section at the very end, so we can tackle it then. So moving on is managing your money, and this is it's kind of the same regardless of the approach that you choose. So whether you choose a limited company or to be a sole trader, the key things here are opening up a dedicated bank account and trying and doing everything you can to separate the money, your personal spend and your personal income versus that of the business, be it limited company or sole trader. If you were a sole trader, technically speaking, there can be a bit of a mix, because ultimately the money in both bank accounts is yours to use, and you don't need to worry about mixing them up. The area where it makes things easier is in your accounting records, where there's just one place where everything that is business has been put through, and you don't have to weed through your personal and Amazon binges or whatever else to get through to the business account. So it will make your life easier from that perspective. If you're talking about a limited company, it becomes all that much more important, because the money in the business is the money of the business. So you should not be spending that unless you've drawn it out or it is specifically for business purposes. Another point here is just really consider your needs when choosing a bank account. There are very many bank accounts available at the moment, but not all of them do the same thing. So you might, I don't know, I know a lot of people who will work with overseas clients. So just look at the T's and C's, look at the fees, and just, there's really no harm in holding more than one bank account. So don't get scared and say, oh, I have to have one bank account, and try to get one bank account that fits the bill perfectly or as well as possible. You can use multiple bank accounts for multiple different reasons. So if you take me, back in the day when I was freelancing, I had overseas clients and I had local clients, and I'm in the UK, so I needed to hold GBP. So I had Sterling as my day-to-day bank account, and I had Revolut for my overseas clients to receive and convert the USD or whatever currency I had. So yeah. I think those are the main things for this slide. Is there, I don't think there shouldn't be any questions here, but is there any questions? I'm happy to answer. This is a bit of a simpler section than the previous one. Yes, Wise is very flexible, but you might find that Wise comes with other fees in other areas. That personally, I find that Sterling doesn't have as many fees. So for your average GBP transactions, now it has fees when you dip into cross currency, but for just your average day-to-day spending, Sterling's has been really affordable in my experience. But everyone has their preferences. All right, I'll move on to managing your finances. And this kind of gets in a little bit into accounting if you wanted to. So here, I am a big fan of software. My clients are all in software, and I'm not really a fan of the clients that come to me with a box of receipts. There's very many accounting softwares you can use. I know that accounts like Monzo and Metal are, and I think even Starling are making it easier for you to invoice clients through the bank account. But software, I'm a big fan of the dedicated software. In my experience, having seen a lot of them, Free Agent is my favorite. And the reason it's my favorite is because you can get it for free. And it's super easy. So the next slide I'll show you how easy it is and how much easier it makes your life. But really consider having an dedicated accounting software, because it also will bring your costs down when it comes to having your accounts managed, because a lot of the legwork will already be done. If you're managing your finances in a spreadsheet, no matter how beautiful they are, and I've seen some really, really well managed accounts in spreadsheets, there's still a lot more work that needs to be done to kind of weed out the information that is needed. And like I said, Free Agent is free, and this kind of ties into the previous section where if you have a Metal bank account, Metal, Ulster Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, I forgot to mention NatWest on the slide, and or NatWest account, you are eligible for a free Agent account indefinitely. And this ties into the previous account where you don't actually have to use those bank accounts. You can just have the bank account for the purpose of getting the free agent account. Unlike the other three, Metal is the only one that, as of right now, has no monthly fees. So if you sign up with NatWest, I think they give you a free 18-month period, and then after 18 months, they start charging you a monthly fee, whereas Metal don't currently have that. So it's worth considering, even just because it's free. It's super important that you keep track of your receipts and your invoices. As a business owner, regardless of whether that's a sole trader or a limited company, you are obligated to hold records for 6 years from the beginning of your last period. So you really need to make sure you have records, because the HMRC can come knocking and ask for info that trails back, and they will expect to see it. So yeah. Just to explain myself on the free agent side, this is a photo of a test client. I'm not showing you any client's personal information, although I would really like it if my business account looked something like this. This is the dashboard on Free Agent. So you can see, yeah, you can see my mouse there. You can see here it kind of has a summary of the cash flow, which isn't even the most exciting of the reports. You've got an invoice timeline right here, which shows the green is the invoices that have been paid, and the red are the ones that are overdue. So you can track those very easily. And you can see a summary of your bank accounts and the expenses that you've put through the business. But my favorite of all is this little box here. So it will tell you the business's profit, the corporation tax that it's estimating you will owe. And here, this golden number is the number you're able to draw from the business. So this is so helpful for a limited company owner. It looks slightly different for a sole trader, but still, like just this information makes Free Agent super worth it, because no other software allows you to see something like this so easily, at least. And then this is just a screenshot, so I can't click into it, but this tax timeline then goes into kind of a list of all the taxes that you are due to pay, both for you personally. So if you were doing a self-assessment, that would show up there, including an estimate of how much you're due to pay. It will include like your corporation tax bill when that's coming up, VAT, all the works, it's in there, which is really, really, really handy. So that's this slide. This section. Does anyone have any questions about this bit? All right, I'm going to take it as And oh, small big design.
Yeah, so I've got a quick question. So you mentioned the carry forward and distributable. Is that, you mean that's money that you can take out of the business? Oh,
yes,
okay.
I think this is Toby, right? We spoke last week. Hey, Toby. So that is the distributable dividend. So it's the money that you can take, that it's factored in the corporation tax that you need to pay, and any other things that are already in the system. So it's factored all of that. It's calculated everything, and it says yes, you can take that much out of the business.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Awesome. Kirsty, do you want to jump in? And DJ has answered your question. But just to follow up on this, you can. It's actually over 85,000. You can choose to register voluntarily, and there are certain benefits to doing that. But again, it depends on your personal situation.
Oh, sorry, I've just realised how to unmute. What a fool, I was pressing the wrong button. But thank you very much for that. That was all. I wasn't planning to be VAT registered if I go down the sole trader route. So I just wanted to know that I didn't have to be. So that's very handy.
No, you don't have to be. You have to be if you exceed the 85K.
Yeah, I think that's probably unlikely at the moment. That's great. Thank you very much.
Grace, do you want to give a bit more context to your question?
Yeah, sorry, just typing really quickly. Yeah, I have an accountant who I'm really not very happy with, but basically I pay them an annual fee for the making tax digital software, or something like that. I've never seen anything like this free agent thing before. I knew it existed, but they've never given me anything like this. So anytime I ask them for anything, they barely answer my questions, let alone actually give me any answers that I'm looking for. So I just wondered, is this something that we should be looking to have separately to our accountancy services, or is this something that should be kind of, whether it's free agent or another provider, is it something that should really be included in their services that we pay for?
It's not something that has to be included. So accountants are more than capable of generating your accounts without having information that's, I'll call it front facing. So that you have access to. I have other software where I then take the information and then can create your accounts, but you don't have access to it. This is just, it's a way of giving the power to you, basically. It's a way for you to manage your money. You could choose, I mean, you'd have to speak to your accountant. I don't know who they are or what their policies are, but most accountants will allow you to use this and as a method to provide them the information. So it's not a must have. Making tax digital is just a way of filing the accounts. It means you're filing the accounts online. So it doesn't mean you have to see this.
Okay, great, thank you.
To answer your question, Rebecca, it depends. I would have to ask you more questions, but the information is on the website, which is linked at the end, so you can take a look there. YunoJuno members have a discount with me for the first 6 months of 15%. Any other questions? DJ?
Hi. I just wanted to ask, because I came in late, sorry, I'm still working. So this free agent software looks amazing. Oh my God, I've never been able to know what my corporation tax is, and I'm actually almost about to get mine, and I'm very afraid. I just wanted, because I've also got an accountant that barely tells me anything and has a really clunky portal that I use. So free agent would be, is it something that you have to subscribe, like a subscription payment online software that you have to then upload all your data to get this kind of info, isn't it? I'm guessing.
So it's easier than uploading. So it's got bank feeds, so you just hook up your bank account and you need to reconcile your transactions. But it does a lot of the legwork for you, so you can generate invoices. Your bank, it connects with, I'd say 90% of the bank accounts. So your most common ones will hook up, and the data will get pulled in.
I'm with Tide, which is
Tide. It pulls in with Tide.
Okay. I don't need it to generate invoices because the accountant software already does that, and it goes directly through them because they need to track it. But the payments for the invoices do come into the Tide. So I would not encourage you to have two different softwares. So what will happen is the accountants will make amendments at the end of the year. For whatever reason, they'll do what's called journal entries. And those will not get pulled through to your free agent account. So it will start to be off. So in an ideal world, your accountant is managing your software and you are looking at just one thing, because it could get thrown off. Oh, of course, but I can't see them using this. That's why, I guess that's why Grace and I are saying, like, how do we get this? You know, because it's so much better than the crap that we've got. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. You might want to have a conversation with them and see if they're able to do that.
Curious. Fair enough. Okay. Thank you.
Pleasure. Any other questions? All right, and I forgot to mention, I have no affiliation to Free Agent, so I'm not. There's no win in you guys signing up for Free Agent. Just so you know, I'm just a massive fan, because I've used other ones and no one seems to get it quite the same.
I think we have a question from Ian. So Ian, if you can unmute yourself, go ahead, please.
Yes, hi. I've got a question basically about accountants. I've had the same accountant since I went freelance over 10 years ago, and it kind of like fell into having her, and she's a lovely lady. I hope she's not on this call. She's not, but I fell into having her because when I went freelance, I came out from a full-time job and she was the accountant there, and we've carried on doing my books and have ever since. But I really kind of feel like I need to move on. She's kind of getting on a bit herself, but I feel like it's a really daunting decision. It's almost like moving house, because you know I might be with that accountant for another 10 years, and so I really want to find the right person. And so I wondered how, like, is there any resources for searching for accountants? I mean, like informally, I don't really like asking friends, or you ask on groups, but how would you go about finding an accountant?
Ask your colleagues on YunoJuno. There's a lot of people on there. They all have different experiences. You can use good old Google and search for accountants for contractors. But the most important thing is speak to the accountants, make sure you're comfortable with what they're doing, and just see if you get along with them.
Is there any kind of resources to, like, you know, like for instance for tradesmen, check a trade? Is there an equivalent for accountants? Or
not that I'm aware of. There's contractor.co.uk and freelancer.co.uk have a list of accountants, but everyone's paid to have their ad listed there, so it's not actually a list that's been generated by a do-gooder who's actually reviewed these accountants. It's paid for service kind of. So there isn't. I haven't seen one. It is if you want it. I'm not aware of anything. I don't know if anyone else on here. Oh, there's unbiased.co.uk.
And I mean, and also, do you think that it's important to find an accountant that works in media, or do you think it's more important that they're like someone told me, don't worry about that, just find someone that does other small and medium-sized businesses?
I don't think it's the most important thing. I think the most important thing is that they understand freelancing and contracting. They don't need to specifically work in media or technology or whatever else.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
So yeah. Any other questions? Toby?
Yeah, so I've got a quick one. So let's present a scenario. So let's say you own a limited company, which I have, but there's potential for a fixed term role. How does it work in terms of taxes if doing a fixed term and you've still got you're still running a limited? Because I understand there's certain tax implementations.
You would just need to file a self-assessment at the end of the tax year, basically.
Okay.
To super simplify it.
Right. Okay.
There would be things, again, speak to an accountant, but you probably wouldn't want to be paying yourself a salary from the limited company in that time, but it just requires a bit more planning on your end to kind of understand the implications of being in a fixed term contract and having that additional external income.
Yeah. Well, I guess my question is, what if you do it and it's not from the limited? So let's say it's an actual fixed term, but it's like if you were basically you're employed, basically.
Yeah, no, that was I understood the question. If it's so basically what will happen is you will be paid personally, and then because you would basically need to file a self-assessment for the additional income from your limited company, because presumably the fixed term might not cover the full term of your of the tax year. It might cover half or whatever, and you will have taken other income from your limited company. So you'll just have to file a self-assessment to declare the both incomes together, that you've got multiple sources of income. If you have just done the fixed term contract throughout the whole tax year, so 6th April to 5th April the following year, you don't even need to do a self-assessment as long as you haven't taken any other additional income.
Okay, right, thank you.
All right, I'm going to move on just because we are getting on a little bit with time. The next bit is understanding your tax obligations, and I'm not a tax advisor, so I'm not going to make recommendations, but what I'm saying here is really make sure that you know what's going on. So understand your deadlines, do your research. And so I've just put in here the key dates that you need to know. As a sole trader, the tax year is the same for everyone. So it runs from the 6th April of the 1 year to the 5th April of the following year. So the current one is 6th April 2023 to 5th April 2024. Then the deadlines again are fixed for everyone. You've got to file and pay by the 31st of January of the following year. So in our case, in the example that I've given here, it's 2025. And there are payments on account, which is basically kind of prepayments for the following tax year, which need to be paid on by the 31st of January and the 31st of July. And yeah, it's just making sure you pay these, because if you don't pay them by these deadlines, because if you don't, there are fines that come with it. Deadlines for limited companies are a little less easy for me to give examples of, but basically, let's take the example of if you've registered your business in December, the tax year runs from the 1st of December until the 30th of November the following year, and then the deadlines are 9 months after the end of your tax year. Again, you have to file and pay your accounts by the specific deadlines, just making sure that you are always aware of these and that you are not relying on someone else to tell you them, because it is your job to know this. Yes, and like Toby said, the free agent tells you all of this, both for the limited company and the sole traders. And just going back actually to the previous slide, this slide also applies to limited company directors if they are drawing dividends or if you have multiple sources of income. So both slides would apply to you in this case, in that case. So both this one about the self-assessment dates and the company dates. I think I'm going to skip this question to this one. Oh, hold on. It's not explained by HMRC, but if your accounts are, it will be done, basically the NI will be calculated when you do your self-assessment, and you just make one lump sum payment. You don't have to make NI payments separately to income tax, if that's the question you're asking, Kirsty. And sorry, the question, because I was going to tell Nanny to read the question. The question is, when you set up as a sole trader, is how you pay national insurance contributions explained by HMRC?
That did answer, thank you. So I just yeah, I mean, I haven't done it yet, obviously, but presumably somebody will tell me where I have to give my money.
Yeah, it's the same place as the income tax. It's just kind of one fee. Okay. You pay the one place.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
All right. The fifth section is understanding your allowable expenses. So here, a big thing is wholly and exclusively for business purposes. So super important is that whatever you are trying to claim, you can prove that it is used wholly and exclusively for business purposes. So, you know, if your computer is used wholly and exclusively for business purposes, which in a lot of cases it is, you can claim that cost. Where it is not wholly and exclusively for business purposes, you can claim part of the cost. But always speak to someone who knows to validate whether you can put something through the business as an expense. So I have some clients who are not in the IT industry, they're arborists, and they'll try to claim a massage because they are up in the trees and climbing trees that are like 10 feet tall, 10 meters tall. So they're doing very strenuous work, but that's not an allowable expense, because the second HMRC sees massage on there, they're going to raise an eyebrow and they're going to come and try to figure out what the hell's going on. Equally, and this might not be as funny, is a yoga instructor shouldn't claim their yoga pants through the business. But again, then there are some intricacies to it. So if those yoga pants are branded to your business, you can claim them through the business. So there are some intricacies to it. So if you do want to claim things, speak to someone who knows about it, because they'll be able to help you and give you some tips on how to do it in a completely legal way. Expenses help to lower your profit, which as a result helps to lower your taxable income. So always make sure you are putting everything legitimate through the business. Don't forget to record something, because you'll pay extra tax unnecessarily. So there are things that can be done, like making pensions contributions to the business, which also lower your taxable income and stuff like that. But the key thing is make the most of the allowable business expense as much as you can. I'm just going to read these questions. So Grace is asking where the best place to set your money aside until you need to pay it is. I'm not sure, to be honest. What I have done recently is I've opened a savings account for my business and I've put the money in there. As long as it's an account in the name of the business, if you're a limited company, it's completely fine. So you're asking if it's okay to transfer them to premium bonds. Are you working as a limited company, or are you, I think you said you're working as a limited company, right, Grace? As long as it's in the name of the business, it should be fine. When you're talking, you will have to pay tax on the interest that you are earning, though. Cynthia is asking, as a sole trader, can I claim heating charges as work from home? There is a very convoluted calculation that you can put through for work from home allowance that basically calculates the percentage of the house you are using and tries to calculate the expense on that. So yes, you can, but oftentimes it's easier to use the standard £312 a year as the work from home allowance, because it's never questioned by anyone. What is questioned is when you try to calculate it yourself, and the difference is often not very large. Emma's asking if pension contributions are an expense available to sole traders or limited companies, and they're available to both. You can make pension contributions, and that will lower the amount of tax that you have to pay. But consult a pension advisor. I'm not one. I'm not allowed to give this advice, but it does, from a tax perspective, lower your taxable profit. can you open another account as a savings account in Free Agent from Toby? Yes, you can. You can have as many bank accounts connected to Free Agent as you want. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. So legal obligations. This is a big one. I've just seen a question, and I'm really bad. I want to leave you guys hanging. Can you use Free Agent and Xero together? There wouldn't be much benefit of doing it, because you'd basically be maintaining two systems that do effectively the same thing. The benefit of Xero is it's better for larger companies when you get into like more complicated accounts. But other than that, there's not really much benefit of having both. It's just a hell of a lot more work for you. Legal obligations, right? So this is a whole other ballgame again. I'm not a solicitor. I'm not giving you advice. I'm just saying, make sure you are aware of what your obligations are. As a limited company, IR35 is a massive thing. There's also the SDC for sole traders. Know this, understand it, because you're going to hear a lot of different things. Make sure you know what the latest is, and the rules are constantly changing. I know YunoJuno has lots of really helpful guides. So read those, sign up to newsletters of other people who are talking about this, and just make sure you are aware, because you are responsible at the end of the day. Even if the company for IR35 is larger, and maybe they are ultimately responsible, you still want to know your basics to know that to validate what they are saying. I mentioned record keeping in a previous slide. Keep your records and make sure that you have them in a safe place, ideally digitally, because receipts paid. So try to keep those digitally as much as possible. You need to keep them for at least 6 years. Insurances, you need to know, you should at least have professional liability. But again, speak to a professional who knows what they're talking about, but just make sure you know what you need. Various different clients will have various different requirements for you. I know YunoJuno checks this, and I know YunoJuno stays on top of it, so they will ask you for documents and make sure that you have always got them up to date. So just make sure that you are doing that and that you are covered. And similarly to the IR35 note, try to stay up to date on the budget updates and what's happening in your world and things that happen around you. So either sign up to newsletters from accountants or freelancer platforms just to be aware of the things that are going on, so that you can be up to date and in the know. Yeah. Let me see. I had some, just if there's anything in my notes. I think that's. Oh yeah, and this includes things like dividend allowance for limited companies. That's constantly changing and reducing, unfortunately. So just make sure you know and you're aware of what's going on. Any advice on good go-tos for freelance pension? Doesn't really make a difference. I work with someone I can recommend if you want to ping me on Slack, Patrick, who I can send, who my clients usually work with. So if you want a pension provider, they help. And paying into pensions expensive. Yes, it is for a limited company. It's an expense that goes in before the profit is calculated. Oh yeah, and DJ is saying that basically you do not need employers insurance if you're the only employee of the business. But I'm not going to read all the notes because we've got 9 minutes to go, so I'm going to keep going. Sorry, Eva, you should be managing me. Right, and this is the question that was asked. I'm actually going to close the chat for a bit because it's distracting me. Give yourself a buffer. So when I was freelancing, I used this little calculation to help me understand if I was budgeting correctly. So this was pre-COVID, whatever the hell is going on right now, the economic issues. But this is the calculation I used. So I assumed that, take a day rate of 350. In order to calculate whether that was enough for me, I assumed I only worked 10 months in a year. So I allowed, basically the other 2 months covered roughly a month of time off, which maybe you'll have, maybe you won't, and a month of bank holidays. So I would probably drop this drastically for this time of this current climate, but I used this little calculation to figure out if my day rate was fine or enough. So it's just like it just helps. Obviously, then you can increase or decrease it depending on your needs. And always set aside money for your taxes. Don't spend that money until, and then say, oh, it'll build up later, especially right now. Set aside the corp tax, the VAT, the personal tax, and don't spend that because you'll be stung if you can't pay it. And try to build up a pot. So always over egg your day rate, because we know inevitably there's going to be days when you're not working and you want that day rate to cover that time. You might take voluntary time off, or you might struggle to find another contract. So just really build up that little cushion and say you can start with 6 months. You can then build up. I had built up to something like 2 years, and it was really nice to just be able to kick back and say, okay, I'm fine, but I keep working, but I'm fine if something happens and I can't work for 2 years. Right. I saw a question pop up very quickly. Yes, Toby, it does tell you how much tax you owe. It's constantly calculating, provided that you've put in your invoices and you've explained your bank feed. Okay, so that is kind of it for the guides that I've put in and kind of the areas that I wanted to cover. Very quickly, because we have a few minutes left. I kind of put things to watch out for, because I've now over the years with Garfield Accountants seen some pretty horrific things, and I think it's important to call these out. So in the accounting community, we have what we call Dave at the pub. Dave at the pub is the guy sitting at the pub giving out shipping out accounting advice that he has no place giving out. Always validate the information you are receiving, even if the person knows what they're talking about or has done this before. Do not take your friends or your colleagues' advice until you've validated it with someone in some way, either done your research or spoken to someone who knows that area, because at the end of the day, your friend or your colleague are not going to be the ones footing the bill of any fines or anything that comes round if you've done the wrong thing. Always do your best to understand your accounts and try to make sure that you're not making decisions based on someone's advice that you do not understand. Even if it's an accountant or a solicitor or whatever else, understand why you are making those decisions, because it's not the accountant or the solicitor at the end of the day who is going to be the one responsible for those decisions. It is you. You are the business owner, you are the sole trader. It is your job to understand that. So I've had a client who joined me middle of last year. Her accountant was putting all of her was telling her, take as much money out of the business as you want. It doesn't matter, we'll explain it later. And she put all the money through the director's loan account, which is a big no-no to leave it there for a very long time. This poor woman paid an extra £9,000 over the years in corporation tax, and was struggling to make ends meet, but had paid an extra £9,000 in corporation tax just because of this overdrawn director's loan account. So when she joined me, we were able to get the director's loan account back down to zero, and she's now due a refund on that £9,000. Now, this doesn't happen to everyone, so please do not come to me and expect £9,000 refunds. I wish I could do that for everyone, but just my point is, really make sure you know the implications of the decisions that are being made. Another one, which has happened recently, is the two people actually off YunoJuno have come to me from the same accountant. That accountant has kept all of their records on paper and has not shared the records with them. So he ran payroll and he didn't give the pay slips, and now he's decided to retire, but refusing to give the pay slips to these people. The records are theirs, rightly so, but he's not giving it to them. So just really make sure you always have the records and save them online all the time. Don't say, oh, I'll do it later, as easy as that might sound. And then another thing is, do not try to cheat the system. Do not think, oh, how is HMRC ever going to find out? They will. Don't try to cheat. As of the 1st of January, they have their eyes in all of these online platforms where people try to make side income. So Vinted, eBay, Etsy, or whatever, be careful and just always declare your income. And then I think the $1 million question is, do I need an accountant? The answer depends again on your personal situation. Are you prepared to stay up to date? Is your business growing? Are your accounts complex? Accountants are there to advise and help you save money. They have experience, they know what they're doing, they've seen a lot. So there are lots of benefits to an accountant, but I appreciate that not everyone can afford it, especially in this climate. They also save you time. Obviously, you might, something that takes them 5 minutes because they've done it 1,000 times will take you a lot longer to figure out how to do it. But that's just obviously my biased opinion. Right, and bang on time. Questions. Does anyone have questions? I'm going to open up the chat again. I haven't been following what's going on, so I don't know if there's any questions I've missed.
I think there's plenty of questions around insurance, but I just wanted to say that if there is a lot of interest around this topic, we can run a separate event on that. So just give us, give me a ring or give me a ping on Slack if you're interested in this topic. This is definitely something that we can discuss. I think there was one question, Nick, that you might be able to address, and that's from Katie. Any tips regarding buffers in terms of saving for maternity leave? Anything that we can quickly advise?
Really, it doesn't make a massive difference if you're limited or a sole trader, because it's all going to come down to just building that buffer. I had a baby last year, so I can actually help here, but it's just building that buffer. So save up. The situation with claiming statutory maternity leave is unfortunately very limited. When you're a limited company, I'm not exactly sure about it as a sole trader, but technically speaking, you cannot apply for the statutory maternity leave through a limited company, because the company cannot keep going while you're on maternity leave. So you cannot ask the government to pay your maternity leave, mat leave. You might pay, but you can pay yourself that money.
Hi, I thought I'd just come off mute quickly. I feel like they make it so confusing when you're trying to research about that. Because I know, there's like the maternity allowance offering, but it's all very confusing. And I couldn't work out, whether it's best to stay as a sole trader and then just like manage that myself, or become a limited company and therefore then pay myself dividends, so that like decreases my tax for that year, although obviously realistically it's not going to be a full year.
You also might be worth considering your partner's situation, and you might be able to give them your maternity allowance, so the statutory maternity allowance, if they're saying a paid job, and they might be able to take some time off to help or whatever.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Zoe?
I'll try and make it quick. Just budgeting spreadsheet. So I pay myself like 1,000 salary, and then the rest I take out in dividends, and I do it quarterly. I use Monzo, right? So you can have a budget in there, but obviously your budget's all over the place because you get a large amount, and I'm constantly switching that dividends from my savings account to make the most out of the interest rates. And I love spreadsheets. I'm happy to use a spreadsheet, but is there a spreadsheet that exists to work it out, or am I just using, let's say, Q1 dividends divided by 3 months and just use that amount?
So what is the figure you're trying to get to?
I haven't thought about that. Just knowing knowing what's coming in, well, preempting if I can. How to make a budget for forward planning,
right. I do have a spreadsheet, if you want to ping me, that I use. It's highly simplified, and the convoluted corporation tax situation isn't fully factored in there, but it will work as a template, just as a guide.
Do you use that for your business or for your personal? Because for the business it's fine, it's for my personal, for the income.
No, I don't have for the personal. So are you trying to understand how much money you're going to have?
Yeah, just trying to forward plan to be like, right, I know I'm not going to have this much. I need this much, and if I don't have this much, I need to ramp up looking out for new work. I'm trying to forward plan as much as possible. Basically.
So I use that spreadsheet, and I use that spreadsheet to determine how much dividends I'm going to be able to draw, which then kind of gives me that figure.
Yeah. Okay, I'll ping you on Slack.
I'll try to help you out.
Cheers.
Okay, I think the great news about this meeting is that this is the most engaged audience we have ever had on a YunoJuno meeting. The bad news is that we have run out of time, and we need to let Nic live her life with her family and her dog. So at first, let me say, if there are still any questions, there will be multiple ways to ask them. So first of all, if you are on our Slack, please just ask a question there. We have a special channel actually for asking any accounting or finance related questions. And so if there is anything that we didn't manage to cover, just ask there, because also there's the whole community and everyone can join in. Today, we only have a fraction of our members at this event, but on Slack we have 5,000 people. So it will also be a community effort in asking and answering questions. Also, on top of that, tomorrow you will receive an email from me, and it may look like a disguised email from Eventbrite. Don't ignore it. It's not only our feedback form, it's also all the contact details to Nic. If you would like to use Nic's services or ask any additional questions, all the contact details will be there. And probably by Thursday, we will publish the recording of this event so that you can rewatch any bits that you might have missed. But I think this is the right moment to give Nic a round of applause, because I think this has been great, and we've all had some good insights to take after this meeting. And Nic, if you still want to say something after I've cut everybody off so abruptly, please feel free.
One point just to add to your email. So Eva's going to send the email with a link to my Calendly. Feel free to book time in that. Regardless of whether you're interested in joining or you just have questions, I am always happy to speak to anyone. I help a number of YunoJuno people. There are a lot of people ping me, so feel free to book some time in. There's no charge. I'm always happy to help. I would look forward to speaking to you. And Grace, I've seen your question. Ping me is all I will tell you. All right, and just again, shouting out here, YunoJuno members have 15% off the first 6 months of a rolling engagement with us at Garfield Accountants. So if you're interested, just drop me a line.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Nic, for hosting, and thank you everyone for joining. I really loved this session, and I hope to hear from everyone very soon on Slack channel, and we'll keep you posted, and watch out for this email with Nic's details in case you have any questions. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.